A controlled experiment. Jack Rayner had barely finished his second cup of coffee when a 6-foot-tall amphibian with 4 arms and a gaze like a tactical scanner cornered him by the coolant filtration units. "Human Jack," Vel'Zari said, voice perfectly modulated, her translator working in clean, accented English. "I require your assistance for a biological compatibility study." Jack blinked. This was only his 3rd week aboard the Zenver Ascendant, an orbital research station that looked like a jellyfish and smelled vaguely of ozone and algae. He was still adjusting to the multicultural chaos of the Galactic Alliance, where species with tentacles, silicon skin, and 7 genders argued about plumbing specs over breakfast. What kind of study?" Jack asked carefully, glancing down at the datapad she held out. "I wish to test your pressure systems, cardiovascular durability, hormonal flux under sustained exertion, fluid redistribution during high-output neural feedback cycles." "Is this about sex?" Vel'Zari didn't blink. She didn't have eyelids, but she paused meaningfully. "Yes. That is a common shorthand among your species." Jack choked on his coffee. "I mean, I'm flattered, but, wait. You're serious?" Vel'Zari's gills flared slightly in what Jack had learned was N'Kari body language for mild offense. "I do not joke. I have analyzed available data on human responses to interspecies intimacy. Your physiology is adaptable. Your dermal elasticity, redundant oxygen systems, and hormonal feedback loops are unusually robust." "Glad to hear it," Jack muttered, setting his mug down on the coolant pipe. "So this is what, some kind of scientific one-night stand?" "Incorrect. I am proposing a controlled trial series. 3 to 5 sessions. I have constructed baseline parameters for physiological thresholds and pleasure indicators. We would document the results. Anonymously, of course." Jack scratched the back of his neck. "Let me get this straight. You want to sleep with me for research?" Vel'Zari tilted her head. "Yes." He stared at her for a long moment. She was beautiful, in a sort of terrifyingly efficient way, her skin a glossy blue-black, her extra arms folded with mathematical precision, her posture unreadable but somehow alluring. Everything about her screamed logic and sharp edges. And yet, Jack had to admit, the idea of being desired, even clinically, by someone like Vel was kind of flattering. And intriguing. Plus, he'd always had a soft spot for engineers. "I mean, I guess I don't have a policy against interspecies exploration," he said. "But I have a couple of conditions." Vel'Zari stepped forward, intrigued. "State them." 1. Full consent on both sides, every time. No data collection unless I say yes. 2. You don't treat me like a lab rat. If this gets weird or uncomfortable, we stop. 3. No neural mods. My brain stays mine. She processed that in a blink. "Agreed. I do not require neural manipulation. Your natural responses are of greater scientific interest." Jack snorted. "You say that like it's not the weirdest pickup line I've ever heard." "It is not intended as one. Though I am willing to modify the delivery if you prefer courtship rituals." "No, no. This is already the strangest Tuesday I've had since arriving on this station." Vel'Zari extended one of her lower arms, palm up. "Shall we consider this the initiation of Phase 1? Jack looked at her hand, then back at her unreadable face. He'd been through worse situations. Heck, last year he'd jury-rigged a broken FTL drive with duct tape and chewing gum. At least this wasn't going to explode. Hopefully. He took her hand. "All right. Phase 1. But if you start pulling out any scanners during, I swear I'm walking out." "Noted. I will record metrics manually for the first session." Jack groaned. "That's not better, Vel." She smiled, just a subtle flicker of her lip slits pulling upward, but it was genuine. "I find you statistically entertaining, human Jack." "Just Jack's fine." She nodded. "Very well. Just Jack. Prepare for evaluation." And with that, the alien engineer turned and walked toward her quarters, confident Jack would follow. He did. For science. Methodology of desire. Vel'Zari's quarters were everything Jack expected from an alien engineer. sterile, symmetrical, and humming with soft blue light from embedded diagnostic panels. No furniture, just modular platforms and retractable arms that lowered instruments from the ceiling like surgical spiders. Not exactly romantic, but definitely efficient. She gestured to the center platform. Please recline. I have calibrated the temperature and gravity to human sexual comfort parameters. Jack hesitated. You, do this often? I have never conducted a physical compatibility test with a human before, she replied. You are my first. Wow, Jack muttered, climbing up. No pressure. Vel'Zari approached with 2 datapads and a scanner. She wore a simple, skin-hugging suit, black with glimmering green ridges that shifted as she moved. It was the closest thing to seductive he'd seen from a species that didn't understand clothing as a concept. Please disrobe, she said. I will begin baseline readings. Jack took a deep breath, pulling off his shirt. All right, but no posting this on Alien YouTube. I do not understand the reference. He chuckled nervously. That's probably for the best. She began her scan, her lower hands taking measurements while her upper pair made notes. She was meticulous, yet surprisingly gentle, touching with precise pressure and avoiding any hint of awkwardness. Jack's skin tingled under her cool fingers. You are experiencing elevated heart rate, perspiration, and facial flushing. Is this anxiety, arousal, or thermal imbalance? A little of column A, a little of column B, Jack muttered. She tilted her head. Fascinating. Human psychology seems to override base physiological logic in sexual contexts. Yeah, that's kind of our whole deal. Brains are messy. Perhaps that is why you are so resilient. He glanced at her. That sounded almost like a compliment. She didn't look up. It was observational. Still counts. Vel'Zari paused. I am beginning to understand that intimacy with your species is not purely mechanical. There are emotional and cognitive variables. Yeah, we don't usually jump into bed just because someone needs a case study. But you did, she noted. Jack smirked. Curiosity's a hell of a thing. Vel finally set down her tools. Then let us explore further. What followed was awkward at first. She tried to guide the encounter using strictly procedural logic, certain pressure points, rhythmic sequences, even verbal commands. Jack stopped her gently. Vel, slow down. You're not running diagnostics on a reactor coil. She blinked. Am I causing discomfort? No. I mean, yes, but only because it feels clinical. Just try feeling it. Forget the readings. Don't think like a scientist. Think like someone who wants. Vel'Zari hesitated. Her species didn't have a direct equivalent for desire. Need, yes. Efficiency, absolutely. But not this vague, illogical longing. Still, she nodded and lowered herself beside him again, this time with less formality, less calculation. She touched him with intention instead of protocol. Her fingers lingered. Her breath, cool and tinged with brine, ghosted across his collarbone. Jack responded with warmth, instinctively guiding her hand to his chest, letting her feel the rhythm of his heart, not as a data point but as something alive. This is non-linear, she murmured. That's the point. The tension broke. Their movements became less about steps and more about signals. Breath, muscle, sound. They laughed when Vel accidentally triggered a muscle spasm by stimulating a nerve cluster she didn't realize was sensitive. She gasped when Jack kissed the base of her neck, where her species stored microsensory nodes. The datapads went ignored. The scanners dimmed. In the silence afterward, Vel'Zari lay beside him, 2 arms across her midsection, 2 cradling the back of her head. Her skin shimmered with heat traces. This session produced variables outside the expected range, she said. Jack grinned, arm draped over her midsection. That's a nice way of saying you enjoyed yourself. I believe I did. It was inefficient, illogical, yet statistically satisfying. Jack chuckled. Welcome to being human, Vel. She turned her head slightly, her silver eyes meeting his. I would like to repeat this trial. With modifications. He raised an eyebrow. Modifications. Fewer tools. increased intuition, more of your feedback. Jack leaned in and kissed her softly, just once. Now you're getting it. Unexpected feedback loops. The warning klaxon blared through the station like a shriek from a dying star. Jack was halfway through a late lunch, reheated noodles and protein cubes, when the ceiling pulsed red. Seconds later, his comm buzzed with Vel'Zari's voice. Precise, urgent. Jack. Core containment is compromised. I require assistance in reactor subsection 7. Immediate. Jack was already on his feet, grabbing his tool pack and bolting out the door. Whatever had gone wrong, if Vel was calling him directly, it wasn't a minor leak. He arrived at subsection 7 to find the access panel half melted and the door jammed open by a pressure wedge. Inside, the air shimmered with unstable heat, and energy pulses flickered around the main conduit. Vel was already there, crouched in front of the plasma regulator, her top arms typing into a console while the lower two held an open conduit cover that shouldn't have been touched without thermal shielding. Jack's gut twisted. You're not wearing gloves. There was no time. The station's coolant bypass loop is offline. If the core overheats by 12.7 more degrees, the magnetic seals will fail. Jack slid next to her, assessing the open conduit. You opened the pressure channel manually? I attempted rerouting through the Nkari redundant array. The system rejected the modulation pattern. I need you to stabilize the human side. Jack swore under his breath. We built that system for worst-case overflow, not a full burn. It'll blow both of us straight into the next dimension if we misalign even one valve. Vel looked him dead in the eyes. Then we will not misalign. They worked in tandem, Jack guiding the mechanical relays while Vel balanced the plasma stream with fine-tuned EM pulses from her gauntlet. Sweat beaded on Jack's brow. He gritted his teeth as a shockwave rocked the corridor. A red line on the regulator climbed. 67%. 71%. 78%. Vel, if we don't redirect some of this through the venting collar, the regulator housing's going to pop. I can't release it unless you lock the interstitial grid from your side. Jack dove to the secondary panel, fingers flying. The system resisted, whining with strain. Then, click. Locked. Do it. Vel activated the purge. A burst of superheated plasma roared through the side channels, shaking the walls. For one frozen second, Jack thought the whole chamber was going to rip apart. Then the lights stabilized. The temperature dropped. The pressure alarms fell silent. They had done it. Jack collapsed against the wall, panting, his shirt soaked with sweat. Vel stood motionless, arms trembling from stress and minor burn trauma. You okay? Jack asked, crawling over to her. She nodded stiffly. My dermal layer is compromised in several places. Minor. Containable. He reached out, took her wrist gently. Her skin was hotter than usual, tinged violet at the edges. You need medical. She looked at him strangely. You returned for me. Of course I did. I calculated your most efficient survival strategy would be to evacuate. You are not bonded to this station. Or to me. Jack's brow furrowed. Vel, you think I'd just leave you behind? You are not Nkari. Our species isolates during threat conditions. We preserve the system, not the unit. Well, I'm not a system. I'm a man. And you're not just some lab partner I hook up with between reactor tune-ups. She blinked slowly. You feel attachment. Even under duress. Jack cupped her cheek, brushing the side of her neck where her sensory ridges fluttered faintly. That's called love, Vel. The irrational urge to keep someone safe, even if it doesn't make sense. Even if it hurts. Vel's voice was quieter now. My neural readings were abnormal after our last session. My core temperature fluctuated during idle states. I dreamt. In color. About you. Jack smiled. That's how it starts. Vel'Zari exhaled slowly. Then I must update my conclusions. This experiment has exceeded its original parameters. Jack leaned in, resting his forehead against hers. It stopped being an experiment a while ago. In the distance, the station's emergency lights faded. Systems stabilized. The crisis passed. But something had shifted between them, more powerful than plasma, more volatile than heat. A connection forged not in data, but in danger and choice. Post-experiment conclusions. Vel'Zari's laboratory was quieter now. The diagnostic arms were retracted, the cold metal benches pushed aside. In their place stood a small, odd-looking structure, a hydrothermal immersion pod, retrofitted to resemble an earth-hot tub. Jack waded into it first, sighing as the warm water hit his sore legs. He leaned back against the curved edge, stretching his arms along the rim. "You know, I think this is the first time I've relaxed since arriving on this station." Vel stepped in more cautiously. Her skin shimmered faintly, reacting to the temperature shift. The pressure differential was recalibrated to simulate Earth gravity. "I also added bubble jets. For authenticity." He laughed. "You really do go all in." She sat beside him, two of her hands resting in the water, the other two folding behind her neck. "Your culture values comfort. I wish to understand why." Jack tilted his head toward her. "And I have decided I approve." The silence that followed was peaceful. Not awkward. Not clinical. Just the sound of soft bubbles and the distant hum of the station. Vel'Zari eventually broke the quiet. "I submitted my findings to the Interstellar Biological Exchange." Jack arched an eyebrow. "Wait, the sex findings?" "Partially. I redacted sensitive identifiers and focused on neural-emotional feedback loops, hormonal resilience, and cardiovascular integrity. The report is titled, Human Pressure Systems and the Role of Emotional Instability in Long-Term Compatibility." Jack groaned. "That's the worst romance title I've ever heard." It has already been downloaded 4,216 times. He blinked. "I'm a case study. You are a successful anomaly. Statistically improbable. Functionally resilient. You know how to flatter a guy." Vel turned toward him, one hand brushing against his. "There is more. I added an appendix. A personal one." Jack stilled. "Yeah. It details my own neural shifts. Emotional variance. The development of affection." He met her eyes, more curious than amused now. "You really feel something, don't you? This isn't just data anymore." Vel'Zari exhaled through her gills, a soft flutter like wind passing through coral. "It is disruptive. But I no longer wish to suppress it." Jack smiled, then looked around the room. "So what now? We just keep soaking and running compatibility reports forever." She hesitated, then reached for a nearby datapad and activated a projection. It showed blueprints, half human tech, half Nkari design, fused into what looked like a traveling engineering module with living quarters. "A hybrid mobile laboratory," she explained. "Designed for long-term cohabitation and cross-species research. A joint project between Earth and the Nkari Coalition." Jack leaned closer, eyes wide. "You're proposing we move in together?" "I am proposing Phase 2, voluntary fusion trial. Cohabitation. Emotional integration. Continual testing." He laughed, genuinely and deeply. "God, you make romance sound like a firmware update." Vel's lower arms wrapped gently around his waist. "Is that a rejection?" He turned toward her and kissed her, firmly, slowly, and with all the clarity that weeks of tension, teamwork, and truth had built. "Not a chance," he whispered. "But you'll have to accept some side effects. Spontaneous affection. Late-night rambling. Me forgetting to put my tools away. I will prepare a risk matrix." They sat together, warm water lapping at their skin, the moment soaked in peace. The station lights dimmed slightly as the artificial night cycle began. After a while, Jack asked, "Vel, do your people dream?" "Rarely. Dreams are considered wasteful." "And now?" She glanced at him, one hand tracing circles on his chest. "Now I waste more than ever. In color. About us." He kissed her again, softly. "Welcome to being human." As they sat there, engineer and ex-soldier, alien and man, something beyond science thrummed between them. Not just attraction, not just adaptation, but a stubborn, irrational force no spreadsheet could measure. It wasn't an experiment anymore. It was the beginning of something real. HFY log, postscript entry, Vel'Zari's report, redacted. Humans possess pressure systems that defy logical boundaries. They endure strain not because they are reinforced, but because they feel under pressure. They love in the face of failure. They commit even in chaos. Hypothesis confirmed. Under extreme conditions, the human heart does not rupture. It adapts.